Alright, I'm going to take the exhaust manifold off this 2006 Toyota Corolla. The process is going to be the same for a 2003 to 2008 Toyota Corolla or Toyota Matrix. They have the same engines. This is the XRS model. So it's the top model with the 2ZZ high performance motor. It's going to be the same process, however, regardless of which Matrix you have or which Corolla you have. The motors are different, but the process is going to be exactly the same to remove the exhaust manifold. The exhaust manifold is shaped a little different for the 2ZZ motors, but the removal and installation process is going to be pretty much identical. Maybe the bolts are a little different or something, and the manifold does look slightly different, but the process is going to be the same. Alright, I'm going to start by removing this plastic cover. Give me a little more room to show you what we're doing. More room for me to get my arm back here. The high-end models have this crossbar here. I might have to get out of my way, but I'll just start with the cover. It's just going to be a couple 10mm bolts. Okay, there's with the cover off. Like I said, it might look slightly different if you have the 1ZZ motor. So back here, there's the heat shield and then the exhaust manifold under it. The first thing I got to do is disconnect the bolts down here that connect the downpipe or what have you to the exhaust manifold flange. Just gotta get under the car to do that. Okay, so that's what you're going to be looking at under there. It's going to be through the two flanges for the downpipe and the exhaust manifold flange. It's got the spring around it, and this is going to be really rusty. You want to spray the crap out of it with some penetrating oil, PB blaster, and the stock ones are 14mm. And I'll get under there and show you, but I wanted to show you what a new one looks like. This is what you're dealing with, but your old ones are going to be really rusty. Okay, so here's the downpipe where it connects to the manifold. So there's one bolt, and like I said, it's going to be all rusty and nasty. Hit it with PB blaster or penetrating oil several times, a few minutes apart before you attempt to take it out. And there is where the other one would be. This is why I'm having to remove my manifold, because I was reinstalling this with a new donut gasket, and my nut on the other side, the nut that's welded on the flange of the manifold, broke and it shot back out at me. So get these sprayed down good and get them out. Alright, so you got to take this exhaust shield off of the manifold so that you can get to the manifold bolts to take it off the head. So you're going to want to spray all these real good again with PB blaster or some kind of penetrating oil. There's a bolt there. There's one right there, down there somewhere. There's one right there under the light. So I'm going to hit these with PB blaster a couple times over a few minutes and see if I can break them loose. Get the shield off. I got the top two bolts out. These bottom two are really rusted. That one, there's like almost no head left. The other one's not quite as bad, but the socket fits real loose on that one. Can't quite get an 11 on it. This one's just, the 11 goes right over and it's loose. The 10 won't fit. They're just annihilated. So I'm just going to pull this out of the way and try to get at these head bolts. Exhaust manifold bolts, where it bolts to the head. Where the hell are they? Alright, this is difficult. I'm going to try to show you. You're just going to have to feel for them. There's one here, it's a nut that goes over a stud. There's one here that's a bolt. There's 5 total, so that's 2. Under this one, oh, where'd he go? Ow, ow, ow. It's higher up. There's 3, it's a bolt. 4, it's a bolt. and then 5's right here. It's a nut that goes over a stud. And I got to get in there with my PB blaster and spray all those real good too. Alright, I finally got all the bolts out. I had to use different lengths of sockets and extensions and ratchets to get them out. So that's the order. Right to left. Like I said, nut, bolt, 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 nut. That's 5. The center one was what was giving me shit. You see the threads there are a little fucked up. All the other ones came out really no problem. That one, it was tight all the way out. It would get slightly looser and then it would get tight again. And I just had to be really careful with it. I kept turning a little at a time and stopping. Let it cool back down because the bolt will expand as it gets hot. That way I didn't snap the bolt off in the head. It was real close. I stopped. I would put it back in a little bit. Let it cool down. That way it's not stopping where it got real tight. Give it 5 or 10 minutes to cool down, come out, turn it a few more times. It was really stiff. I just took about an hour taking my time to get that bolt off so I didn't snap it in the head. You just want to stop and let it cool off for 5 or 10 minutes. That way it doesn't expand and get stuck and snap off in the head. Because if you snap the bolt off in the head, well, you're fucked. Then you're going to have to take the head off the car. So, much patience and time. I got it out without breaking it off in the head. So now, I don't know about the 1ZZ motors, but this is a 2ZZ. Like I said in the beginning, there is no O2 sensor in the manifold. So I should be good to go just to wiggle this thing, break it loose, and then pull it out. Because on this one, the O2 sensors they're both down by the cat. None of them are in the manifold, but on the other Corollas and Matrixes with the 1ZZ, I'm not sure, but there may be an O2 sensor in the manifold. If there is, you'll just want to unclip it. If you're just replacing the gasket, or remove it before you do any of this if you're replacing the entire manifold. I don't know if I can get this on film, but I'm going to try to wiggle this thing loose now. Yeah, I probably need both hands. Okay, I couldn't get the manifold off because this is going to be fun. Alright, I'm trying to show you down here. Let's see here. That pipe, part of the EGR system, I believe. I was yanking and yanking on this thing, couldn't get it loose. This silver pipe is that rusty shit to your manifold. It's part of the EGR. And it wraps around the side here, I'll show you. Alright, so I got some shit pulled out of the way so it's easier to see here. So that's where the pipe wraps around. And I haven't got it disconnected from this junction yet. But basically that bracket right there is welded to it. On the bottom of that is this 12mm bolt, which is what has that thing bolted down tight as shit. And it's attached to the manifold, and that's why I couldn't get the manifold off. Now the manifold's loose now that I took this out. But to get to that, there's all this shit you have to move. This, which I have pushed out of the way here now, I had to disconnect this wire loom here from up there, so it was loose. I had to disconnect it down there, which I broke that fucking tab off. And then this thing is held on. Well, you can see this EGR pump, or whatever the hell this is with the sensor, I had to unplug the sensor. Then you can see that down there with the hole. There's two little 10mm that bolt it to that. So I had, what the hell is this thing doing? Alright, I had to unbolt it from there. And then this bracket here is just held on by these things with the rubber around it. So I had to unbolt all this shit. Unbolt the bracket here so you can move this a little like that, so you can get to this little damn 10mm back here that has this attached, so you can move all this shit out of the way so you can actually get to the bolt down there holding the bracket. So yeah, I did manage to get the top part of the heat shield off, so there's way more room down there now. And quite honestly, it was hard just to fish that thing through. So I don't even know if you can get the manifold out with the heat shields attached. I still have the bottom one attached, and we're gonna try it that way. If not, I'll have to rebolt up the manifold and try to get the bottom one off. So these are the freaking, what's left of the bolts that was holding that heat shield on. I gotta tell you, these things are a freaking lifesaver. This is what I used to get them out. Again, I think it's twice I've used this now doing this job. And these things just, they're designed for removing bolts where the head's rounded off. The socket was slipping on that. Can't even get a socket to stay on that. I mean, it's half gone. These things just bite into it. And, gotta find the right size one, but there it is. These things just bite into it and dig it out for you if you can get enough pressure on it. One wasn't too bad. One was rather difficult. I had to push on it as hard as I could, smashing my hand against everything, but I finally got it out. So these things are going to be a freaking lifesaver on something like this, if your bolts are all nasty like mine. This has 250,000 miles on it, and it's been driven through every single Ohio winter since '06, so that's what you get from that. Alright, so I'm going to attempt to take apart this junction here. That way I ain't trying to feed that whole thing up, over, and around all this shit when we get the manifold out. This car is fucking stupid. It's this goddamn bracket right here. Fucking bolted to the bottom of the manifold right there. Still holding it back. So now I gotta take that motherfucker off. Yay, more fun. Alright. So, down there where you can see that bolt or shaft or whatever sticking out there. That thing. And that was cool. Down there. Fuck my life. So anyways, this little fucker's down there. Some kind of shock absorber. I don't even know how the hell I'm going to get it back in there. Like, I don't know if I got to compress it to get it back in. And I already tried compressing it, and it's stiff as fuck. So, just everything's in the way down there. But the manifold's loose, and I couldn't get it out because the pipe for the EGR there, it hits this as soon as it goes back any at all. So whether that piece is connected or not, it's still not coming out unless you take this out. So, God, that was a fucking nightmare. I finally got this out. Combination of hitting it from the top and the bottom with just really long freaking wrenches. It's out. I don't know if I'm going to have to like jack up the motor to get it back in, or if it's just going to line up and then bolt back in. Hopefully it'll just line up and bolt back in. So now I'm thinking I can pull the manifold loose. I might be able to leave that on there because I don't know. We'll see. Alright. There's no way the manifold's coming off with this thing attached. unless I took off my AC lines and shit. But with the manifold off the back now, it's just dangling there. Now I can finally get to this other clip where the fucking part you need to squeeze is on the bottom of it. I couldn't get to it, so now with this pulled off, I can get some kind of pliers or something down there and squeeze that and finally get this damn hose off so I can pull my manifold out. Alright, I got them both slid up there. Now let's see if I can pop this damn pipe off. Okay, there's the little fucking piece of shit. There's the rest of it. Now I'm gonna see if I can feed it through there and get the manifold out of here. Yay. Alright, I'm just trying to show how I got this up and out of here so far. So I got it kind of tipped back like that, and basically I fed this through first. This wire right here, be careful. I unclipped it from that bracket right there. Ooh, look, there's my blood. Got it up and out like that. So this is how you're gonna need it. And I'm gonna try to wiggle it up and through here and feed that under there. I haven't had to remove this plastic yet, so I'm gonna try to leave this on and see if we can get it out. I wanted to show the orientation of how I have it now, because I think that's how you're gonna have to get it out. Yeah, this is gonna have to move. It wants to come straight up and out like that, hitting the wire. So I'm gonna have to unplug these coils, and then it's that 10mm bolt there. There's a couple of those, so I can unattach this. Hopefully moving this up will be enough to get this out. Alright, well, guess what? This fucking thing doesn't fit through there. It hits the valve cover. That's awesome. But I suppose taking the valve cover off and putting a new gasket on is like easy as fuck compared to everything else I've had to done so far. So let's rip the fucking valve cover off now so we can get this goddamn thing out of here. 'Cause there's no way to get it out through the bottom. And it doesn't fit through here. See? I've tried. I've been trying. I've been scratching the fuck out of everything. It does not fit. You gotta take the fucking valve cover off. I hate this fucking car. I managed to get the bottom shield off. Now that we're removing the valve cover, I don't even know if that's necessary, but with it flopping around in there and shit, the bottom ones are already rusted away. The top ones were really easy to get to, being able to move that thing around. So, that's off. Okay, so if you have the 1ZZ motor, your valve cover is going to be smaller because these humps aren't going to be as big because you're going to have different cams because you don't have lift. You only have vvt. You don't have the vvt-li or whatever. And your manifold is smaller, and I'm not even sure which in all models have this air injection crap, which that's what this ended up being, is air injection. That's the air injection pump. It's not EGR, although it is emissions crap. With this being the 2ZZ motor, it doesn't fit out the top. I think if you have the 1ZZ without the air injection, you'll be able to get it out the top because your manifold's smaller, you don't have this, and your valve cover is shorter. Now for this 2ZZ motor, I ended up looking up some sites because there's not really a lot of info on this that produce aftermarket headers for these, and found their instructions on how to remove the manifold to install their header. Well, guess what? You have to drop the subframe. So my thought was, hey, maybe I can pivot this motor forward, attach ratchet straps to it or something. And I was like, oh, well, I'd hook it right here and maybe ratchet strap it forward enough to where I can get that out. Well, that's never going to work because this is way too flimsy. It's hard for me to do one hand and show you with the camera, but if I put both hands on this, this whole thing just bends relatively easily, and the headlight and bumper flex with it and everything. So this is nowhere near strong enough to ratchet strap that motor forward.
because it'll just collapse the whole freaking core support here. I thought I might even hook my truck to it and try to pull it forward, but that's not going to work because the car's on jack stands and it'll just pull it off the jack stands. So like I said earlier, I was thinking remove the valve cover and then maybe it'll fit, but I'm not sure because I don't know how close under this the cam is. So it may only give me a few more millimeters of clearance with the valve cover off, or it could give me like an inch. I'm thinking if I had an inch I could get it out, but there's no way to know how much clearance there's going to be until I take it off. So it could be taking it off for nothing, but I may end up doing that. But even if I do that, I don't know if the tubes will clear. Maybe I'll get this part over and then the tubes are still going to hit the head or something. Because I kind of think like if it'll fit with the valve cover off, I think one of those sites out there would be like, oh yeah, if you just take the valve cover off it'll fit. But the two that I found that produce headers for this, they said drop the subframe. Okay, one other thought I had is if you could get a small enough bottle jack in there and you could find a place somewhere on the firewall to put it, perhaps you could push on the motor and the firewall, have to push the motor out this way. But I don't know if the firewall is strong enough to hold that much pressure or if you're going to bend your firewall. And there's not much room to put it without smashing these brake lines or something. So I tried prying on it a few times. This is way too long and bendy, but pulling on this and pulling on the back of the motor, and I got it to move, oh, I don't know, quarter to maybe a half an inch. So I'm thinking if I take the valve cover off, disconnect the rear motor mount or whatever mounts there may be, I'm not sure. There's one here and I know there's one down there. I don't know if that's it or there's more. I gotta look. But if I remove the right motor mounts, take off the valve cover and pry forward at the same time, I'm thinking I can get it out through the top. That way I don't have to drop the subframe and support the motor and disconnect the motor mount to do the subframe and all that crap. Let's see, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Alright, coils are out. They just simply pull out. Then you're going to need to remove this EGR tube here. This should be 10 millimeters also. Okay, then disconnect these tubes. It's just these squeeze type clamps here. You just need needle nose pliers to squeeze those and pull the tube off. And this is just part of the intake shit, so there's no fluid or anything that's going to come out of these. Okay, those are removed. You're just going to have to kind of stick a flathead screwdriver in there and kind of pry it back and wiggle at the same time, and they'll pop right off once you got these clamps slid back. Okay, then you just have to go around and remove all these 10 millimeter bolts that attach the valve cover to the head. I think there's a couple over there, some on the back side there. And then on this side you got all this bracketry stuff connected to it. You want to go ahead and unbolt that. That way you're not still hung up there when you go to take it off. And this piece here looks like it's part of the head, so that should be fine remaining there. Okay, so far there was 3 in the front, 3 in the back, and 1 on the side here. And this one's gonna have a couple more. Okay, so that one you don't have to take off. That's part of it. And then these, damn it. These 3 right here, one's for the valve cover and those other 2 is just shit that's attached to the valve cover. But this one here is not attached to the valve cover. Okay, so all the bolts that actually hold the valve cover down, they're all the same there. And then those other 2 you have to take off on that back side there. Are these little ones, so no worry about mixing them up. Alright, so I just carefully bent these out of the way, put them behind this throttle cable here to get them out of the way. This is a rubber line. This is a metal line, however, so you want to be careful with that. These are the 2 that you unbolted. So when that comes up, you got to be careful not to bend this line because it's metal. You're just going to have to kind of like push it up out of the way. So, of course, this is going to have to be out of the way. This should be ready to come out. But But you're going to need to be careful here as well, because these bolts are still running through this EGR shit here. So if you lift straight up, you're going to bend your EGR pipe. So you're going to have to like pop this thing loose and then kind of go up and back with it and then out at an angle or something. So it should be free. Kind of a two-handed thing. See if I can break it loose with just my hands. Should already be fairly loose. You can see there it's coming up. Just go around it and pry up on a few places and try to pop it up. This actually has 250,000 miles on it. Looks great. That's what your shit should look like with 250,000 miles if you change your oil and use full synthetic oil. Alright, that seems like it freed up a lot of room, so hopefully I can get it out there now. I'm gonna make sure that I cover this shit up so I don't get any rust and shit in here. See if I can get it out. Yeah, look at that. Fuck dropping the subframe, just take the damn valve cover off. Came right out. So now that I have this damn thing out, oh yeah. So there's my shitty nut that's broken and gone. I'm going to try to show you the back side of the head here. So that is the driver's side. So there's the collector that your manifold connects to.